turnout. I appreciate all of you being here. And Mary, thank you very much for those generous words. And thank you very much for this. Granny B, a heroine from the state of New Hampshire, played a very important role in reminding this country that democracy is about one person, one vote, not about billionaires buying elections. And that's a lesson that I have absorbed very strongly. Now, interestingly enough, as I received this today is, as I understand it, the 6th anniversary of one of the worst Supreme Court decisions made in the history of our country. And that was by a 5-4 decision. The Supreme Court said to the wealthiest people in this country, to the millionaires and billionaires, in the Citizens United case, they said, you already own, as very wealthy people, much of the economy. Now we are going to allow you to purchase the United States government. Now here in New Hampshire and Vermont, we understand that what democracy is about is people sitting today in meetings like this, arguing about the issues, and then voting one person, one vote. Billionaires do not have more influence than middle class or working people. One person, one vote. So in memory of Granny D, in recognition that today is the 6th anniversary of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court case, let me say very clearly that no nominee of mine to the United States Supreme Court will get that nomination unless he or she is firm in saying they will vote to overturn that disastrous decision. When I may be coming from New England, I have a passionate belief in democracy. People with different points of view, arguing about what they believe in. And then at the end of the day, majority rules. And I am deeply worried about the direction of American democracy today when we have one of the lowest voter turnouts in the world. I want to see this country have one of the highest voter turnouts in the world. I want to see people, whether they're progressive, moderate, conservative, be able to run for office and win or lose based on their ideas, not on the amount of money they've attracted from the wealthiest people in this country. So, Granny D, thank you very much. The work that you did in your lifetime was not in vain. We will overturn Citizens United. Let me just say a few words. I want to focus this morning on senior issues, frankly, which do not get enough attention in the political life of this country. But before I get there, I want to say a few words about our campaign and some of the issues that I believe are most important to the American people. As many of you know, when we began this campaign about 9 months ago, our candidacy was considered to be a fringe candidacy. Media thought my hair was just beautiful, but other than that, they didn't think we had much of a chance. Well, the world has changed a little bit in the last 9 months. With your help, I think we can win here in New Hampshire on February 9th. We are running very aggressively in Iowa. I think it's going to be a close election there in their caucus line. I think we have an excellent chance to win there because we have, in both states, enormously strong grassroots volunteers. We have thousands and thousands of volunteers right here in New Hampshire, making sure that people come out to vote, because I believe if there is a large voter turnout, if we can really get democracy moving, I think we're going to do well here in New Hampshire, and I think we're going to do well here in Iowa. And if we do well in both of those states, I think, my friends, we are looking at one of the great political upsets in the modern history of the United States. And I think the reason we are doing well here in New Hampshire and in Iowa, while we're closing the gap nationally, is that people understand that in our great country something is fundamentally wrong when we have a grotesque level of income and wealth inequality. People understand that America is not about the top 1/10 of 1% owning almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. America is not about the 20 wealthiest people owning more wealth than the bottom 50% of the American people. America is not about giving more tax breaks to billionaires and cutting nutrition programs for hungry children. What this campaign is about is not only addressing Citizens United and a corrupt campaign finance system which is undermining American democracy, it is also dealing with a rigged economy. An economy in which the middle class for 40 years has been disappearing. We're in Vermont and here in New Hampshire. You all know this is true. We have people working not one job. Sometimes they're working 2 jobs, they're working 3 jobs. You got moms working, you got dads working, you got kids working. We work the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world. And at the end of all that, 58% of all new income goes to the top 1%. Nobody thinks that makes sense. So our job is to create an economy that works for working families and not just a handful of billionaire campaign contributors. When we talk about the issues facing this country, you may have read yesterday that last year was the warmest year on record. And that in recent years, we continue to have warmer and warmer years. And you all know in this room that the scientific community is virtually unanimous in telling us that climate change is real, climate change is caused by human activity, and climate change is already doing devastating harm in our country and around the world. And I pledge to you that if elected President of the United States, I will lead this country in working with China, Russia, India, countries all over this world, in standing up to the fossil fuel industry, in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainability. I have 4 kids and I have 7 beautiful grandchildren. And you have children and grandchildren. Our job is to leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable for future generations. And I will tell you something.
Thank you.
That is really, really alarming. And that is we have a major political party. Some of you may have heard of it. It's called the Republican Party. And almost without exceptions, there are a few exceptions, but almost without exceptions, you have Republican candidates getting up there and saying climate change is a hoax. Donald Trump's assessment of the situation, being the brilliant scientist that he is that climate change is a hoax created by the Chinese. It shocked me very much. I thought it was the Mexicans or the Muslims, but apparently it was the Chinese who created this particular problem. Now, there's another point that I want to get to with regard to the campaign stuff before we get into some other issues. And that is, in the last week or two of a campaign, a lot of stuff gets thrown around. That's what politics is about. Media picks up on this stuff. And one of the arguments being used against me is that Bernie Sanders, nice guy, but you know what? He just cannot win a general election. He's up against the Republicans, my goodness. No way he's going to beat Donald Trump and these other candidates. So, I am happy to report to you the results of a poll taken by WMUR and CNN just the other day. And here are the results here in New Hampshire. In terms of Marco Rubio, Secretary Clinton loses to him by 1 point. I beat him here in New Hampshire by 18 points. In terms of Mr. Kasich, it's a tie between Secretary Clinton, Governor Kasich. I beat Kasich by 21 points. In terms of Governor Christie, Hillary Clinton defeats him by 3 points. We beat him by 23 points. And my favorite, the man who I would love to run against, Hillary Clinton defeats Mr. Trump by 9 points. We defeat him by 23 points. Now, it doesn't sound good. I know a poll is a poll, and that's true. The world changes every day. Some polls are good, some polls not so good. But I'm not quite sure that with those numbers, the Republicans are all that excited about running against us. But it's not just here in New Hampshire. Not quite, but very strong numbers in matchups against Republicans in Iowa. And here's a national poll. Last national poll came out the other day. The good news is Secretary Clinton defeats Trump by 10 points. National poll, we beat him by 15 points. But that is only half of the story politically. Now, polls are polls. But here's the other half of the story, which is actually more important. I think it is fair to say, and no objective observer would argue with us, that for Republicans to win, given their disastrous agenda of denying the reality of climate change, of their desire to give huge tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires, of their desire to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The way Republicans win elections is when the voter turnout is very low. And last November of last midterm election, voter turnout was abysmally low. There was no excitement, there was no energy on the Democratic side. 63% of the American people didn't vote. 80% of young people did not vote. And Republicans won a huge landslide victory. I believe that anyone who looks at Secretary Clinton's campaign and our campaign objectively, in terms of the turnouts that we're seeing, in terms of the energy among working people and young people, will say, this is the campaign that has the energy, has the momentum, and can create a large voter turnout to bring us to victory.
Yes, it is.
And what a large voter turnout and an engaged base is about is not only retaining the White House, which is enormously important, it is regaining the U.S. Senate,
It is gaining seats in the House. It is winning governor's chairs up and down and all over this country, which is exactly what we have got to do. So what this campaign is about is treating the American people as intelligent people, is about talking about the real issues that impact our lives. And let me repeat to you what I say all over this country, and that is no candidate, no president of the United States, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else, can do it alone, cannot alone bring about the transformation that we need politically and economically in this country. Can't do it alone because the powers that be, whether it is Wall Street, whether it is corporate America, whether it's the corporate media, whether it is large campaign donors, these people have so much power that the only way we transform this country is through a political revolution in which millions of people begin to stand up and say in an unprecedented way that our government belongs to all of us, not just the 1%. I mean this very sincerely. I obviously will need you here on February 9th, but I will need you the day after the election, because what politics in America today is about a Congress which is very significantly controlled by the wealthiest people and the most powerful institutions in our nation. And time after time, what Congress does is turn its back on the needs of the American people. We need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Which in my view is $15 an hour over the next several years. Congress does not want to raise the minimum wage a nickel, and you got Republicans coming forward saying, you know what I think? This is what they say. They say we should abolish the concept of the minimum wage so that in high unemployment areas people can work for $5 an hour. Way out of touch with where the American people are. I believe, and the vast majority of the American people believe, we should have pay equity for women workers. No rational reason why women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. That's just old-fashioned sexism. We have got to change that.
Thank you. Thank you for my future.
That's not what the Republicans believe. I believe that at a time when real unemployment is close to 10%, youth unemployment much higher than that, we need to create millions of decent paying jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, roads and bridges. That's what the American people want, not Republicans. I believe that in the midst of all of this massive income and wealth inequality, where you have major profitable corporations, in some cases making billions of dollars a year, and in a given year not paying a nickel in federal taxes, yes, I do believe that the wealthiest people and the largest corporations in this country will have to start paying their fair share of taxes. And yes, in the year 2016, where so many of our young people are finding it hard to afford to go to college, where millions of people are today trying to deal with very, very high levels of student debt and outrageously high interest rates. Yes, I believe that in the year 2016, public colleges and universities should be tuition free.
They can do it. They can absolutely do it.
Substantially lower interest rates on student debt, and that we're going to pay for that through a tax on Wall Street speculation.
End the abuse and waste of Wall Street.
And illegal behavior brought our economy to its knees, worst economic downturn since the Great Depression of the 1930s. The middle class of this country bailed out Wall Street. Well, in my view, now is the time for Wall Street to help the middle class of this country.
Woo!
When we talk about issues like Citizens United, it's important to understand that not only are the Republicans not willing to overturn Citizens United, this is hard to believe but true, they want to make our campaign finance system even worse. Right now, this campaign season, the Koch brothers and others will be spending hundreds of billions of dollars on independent expenditures. That's what the Citizens United case allowed them to do through super PACs. What the Republican leadership wants to do is to end all limitations on campaign finance, meaning that the Koch brothers themselves can give directly to any candidate they want, $100 million, $200 million. In other words, they can make candidates official employees of them.
Right.
My friends, this is an issue of huge consequence. I am the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. And in that capacity, I worked as hard as I could to make sure that veterans get the best quality of health care that they can and get the benefits that they all have earned. And the idea, in that capacity, I have talked to veterans who fought in World War II, fought in Korea, fought in all our wars, up to Iraq and Afghanistan. And it is incomprehensible to me that people have put their lives on the line and died to defend American democracy. We now find ourselves in a situation where billionaires can buy elections. Let me talk a little bit about senior issues, if I might, because these are issues that do not get the kind of discussion that I think that they need.
I think so
For a
too.
start, when we talk about a disappearing middle class, let's understand that over half of the seniors, half of people between 55 and 64 in this country have no retirement savings. So when you look at a nation in which for many years, real inflation accounted for wages have gone down, where people have been unable to save. Right now, over half of the people between 55 and 64 getting ready for retirement, they have zero in the bank. And you wonder why the American people are anxious, why they are angry, heading into retirement with $0 in the bank. And yet, despite that, my Republican colleagues, they think that we should cut Social Security benefits. No! Thank you. Now, I started a caucus a couple of years ago. It was called the Defending Social Security Caucus. And I did that along with some other progressive senators because it boggled my mind that you have virtually all Republicans and, I'm embarrassed to tell you, some Democrats who were talking about cutting Social Security. So we stood up and we worked with the AARP, we worked with the National Committee to Defend Social Security and Medicare, the Alliance for Retired Americans, all of the major senior organizations. They did a great job. And what our message was, is that when you have millions of seniors and disabled people and disabled vets trying to get by on $12,000 or $13,000 a year, no, you are not going to cut Social Security. Not only are you not going to cut Social Security, you're going to expand Social Security benefits. I know that I will shock all of you when I tell you that sometimes some folks who are involved in politics are not necessarily honest about what they say. Please recover from that shocking statement. No, it's not that Roswell was real. It's that politicians distort reality. Here's one of the areas where we have seen a lot of distortion from our Republican colleagues. When they go about saying how we've got to cut Social Security, but they say, no, Social Security is going broke. It's not going to be there. We're going to have to cut benefits. Answer is that Social Security today has $2.8 trillion in the trust fund, can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 19 years. Social Security is not going broke. Second argument that you'll see on TV is, well, you know, we have a really large national debt, we have a deficit, and we've got to cut Social Security. But every person here knows that Social Security is independently funded through the payroll